Welcome to USA Biz Party, the party after the party, the chat after the chat. I'm your host, Anna Scheller, and it's a pleasure to have you with me today. I'm super excited because not only do I have another podcasting friend joining me today, but we're going to be on Twitter live as well. So Periscope, as you know, went the way of the dinosaur, kind of extincted itself out, but Twitter Live is here. So I am looking forward to all the people who will be joining us through Twitter as well as Facebook and YouTube today. Want to know more about us? You just have to join us every Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Twitter. Use that Twitter, our hashtag USA Biz Party, so we know you're talking to us. Otherwise, we really don't know you're there. So join us every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So today I have with me as my very special guest, the co-host of the Monday morning podcast. Did I do this right? Am I doing this right? I'm going to get this wrong. Melanie Boylan. Melanie, welcome to USA Biz Party.
Hi, thank you for having us, or me, to this point. It feels so weird doing this on my own. I'm normally doing the podcast with Esther, as you know.
Oh, yes, for sure, for sure. How did you guys get started? I mean, all of a sudden one day she said, "Oh, Anna, you need to be on my podcast because we're starting this Monday morning." And oh gosh, now I can't even say it right.
The Monday Morning Marketing Podcast.
Monday morning. I knew there were 3 M's in there. Monday Morning Marketing Podcast. How'd you guys get started?
Well, you can actually thank somebody else for it. We were at another event back in 2019 when we could actually see each other. Do you remember those days? Myself and Esther, we've known each other for years and years and years. We've been, working on the team with another sort of influencer here in Ireland, and we've never really worked closely together before, but we knew each other and we got on well. And when we met at this event, we were just cracking jokes as usual. And this one person said, "Oh my God, you two are so funny. You two should do something together." And they kind of looked off for a second and went, "You should try a podcast." And for some reason, even though we'd known each other all these years, and obviously podcast isn't a new thing anymore these days, and we just looked at one another, and this was like the most profound idea ever. And we both walked off to the nearest bar, which in fairness wasn't far. And we decided pretty much that day that we were going to do a podcast the following year. And that's exactly what we did.
Oh, wow. So it was not a planned thing, just kind of one of those things that happened. Because I think a lot of people, when they want to get started podcasting, they think, well, I have to do this and I got to do that. And, I have to have all of these plans in place. And in actuality, the key is just get started, right?
Well, yes. Yes, ultimately, that's what it boils down to. And half the reason why we didn't do a podcast is because we just didn't get started. It was something that we've both considered, we've both thought about at different times with different ideas. And I guess we just kind of shelved it because we were doing other stuff. But then all of a sudden, because we could, I suppose, be accountable for each other and make it work together. I think both of us are a bit nervous about doing it on our own, to be fair. But now I just couldn't imagine doing the podcast without her.
Yeah, and I've been a guest on your podcast once or twice, and you guys keep it entertaining. But it's very informational. I mean, one of the questions that was asked during the chat today was, how do you keep people listening to your podcast? And I think that's a really important thing to be thinking about as you're getting ready to do a podcast, because if it's just informational, let's face it, you could just get a book and read information. But podcasts have to be more than informational. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, definitely. And one of the things that we particularly like about podcasts, the ones we follow, is the fact that they get to the point very quickly. And, most of the people that we're dealing with are already in business or starting business. And especially startups, as you know, they wear an awful lot of hats. They're doing an awful lot of things at the same time. They can't spend hours and hours and hours trying to get to the point of something. And so we decided to make our model very brief. You can always get more information. We've got blogs, we've got, when we've got our guests, they've got their own websites. And so we tend to give people the tips that they need to get them started looking at these websites, or listen to our speakers in greater detail. And we always talk about the learning outcomes when we're introducing our next podcast. So it's pretty much giving people what they're looking for in a short space of time, and try to keep it amusing as much as possible. Anyway, I'm the funny one.
Well, yeah, everybody has to have a straight man, don't they?
Yeah, that's Esther.
That is Esther. That is Esther. Although she does have a cracked sense of humor. Let's face it. Let's face
Yeah.
it. So, Esther, if you're listening or watching, we'll tip our hat to you there. So now, one of the things that I think a lot of people struggle with is, how do I get started? So we can say just do it, but a lot of times we think, oh, well, what platform do I use? How expensive is it?
Mm-hmm.
We had one individual who talked about somebody charging him $800 per minute of video, which of course you can find so many people out there who are willing to do good work for so much less. But it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. But what are 3 good tips you could give somebody who says, well, I know I should. We heard that. How many times in the chat today did we hear, I know I should, but. So what are 3 things that can take you past but into actual action?
Yeah, we're going to get past the buts. Absolutely. So, yeah, you walked into
and everybody's got one. Just saying.
So first and foremost, the go-to, in my opinion, for people starting a podcast should be Anchor. It's a platform that's completely free, that helps you share your podcast to all the recognized authorities in podcasts like Spotify and Podbeam and so on and so forth. And it shares it for free. There is a little bit of setup in the first place. Won't lie to you, it can be a little complicated. So that would be my first go-to. And then it's Audacity, which is where you would edit your podcast. Sorry, it just went out of my head for a moment there. So you've got Audacity would be your second tool to use for your podcast. And again, that's completely free. But as much as you use all these free platforms, I will be honest with you, you're going to have to set aside some budget for some tools. And one thing we've noticed, when there was a difference between our podcast mics, it sounded so obvious. Now we've both got exactly the same mic with so much better quality. You have to spend a few bob behind, or sorry, a few pound or euro or dollars behind your microphone. Absolutely. And then you've got to either find time to share it yourself or pay for a platform that can share it for you. And third and finally, ideally, you should have a website. And that can be quite expensive, as I'm sure you're aware, Anna. But if you're going to have a website for the podcast, then also make sure you have a section that includes show notes, because it helps you get found in search. So there is a fair few things you need to take into account, but we didn't do them all in one go, and neither do you.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep that in mind. First, you got to get started. And then, just like what you found, you want to add things a little bit at a time as you have time and space. But you also have to budget the time and the money for those tools, because if you're going to invest the time in podcasting, then ultimately it's going to come down to there's got to be some return for your time, whether it's bringing more people in. For some people, it's not so much about the money as much as it is about reaching a wider audience. And so, but yet you want to stay true to your message, because we don't want to get into you don't want to get into the trap of trying to please everybody and then you please nobody. You want to stay true.
You become a recognized authority as well. Myself and Esther, we're already in the marketing space under our own banners, but now we're becoming a recognized authority as a joint venture as well. People know that this is what we do. We do marketing.
Right. And that's one of the beauties of podcasting too. So if you are looking to grow your business, podcasting is a powerful way to do it because it does establish you as an authority in your niche, in your own special voice. Because I think sometimes, Melanie, people think, well, but there's already a podcast out about marketing, or there's already a podcast out about leadership, or there's already a podcast out about psychic readings or whatever. But see, you have an individual specific voice that people need to hear, that a certain subset of people need to hear because you will resonate with those people at a level that they can receive it. Because
Mm.
I don't listen to all of the podcasts on sales and I don't listen to all of the podcasts on leadership or business, but the ones that I do are because I can really connect with the speaker and they're providing valuable information, and it does help if they're being entertaining. And that doesn't mean you're cracking jokes all the time, but it does mean that you're giving value while helping to bring people's guard down from receiving information that otherwise they wouldn't if it wasn't in a more entertaining type of format, right?
Agreed, yeah, and people remember it better when you're sort of plugging it away in a method that they understand and want to consume. I mean, I don't know how you do it. When I go to IKEA, I'm one of those people that I open the box, I start putting stuff together. If it doesn't work, maybe I'll look at the instructions then. But 9 times out of 10, I'll be honest with you, I don't do that. I go straight to YouTube and I get a video on how to put it up together. When it doesn't work, I then hand it over to my husband. He then puts everything back out together again, reads back to front, sometimes in different languages, the manual, and then does it normally several hours later.
Right. And and I think people the other thing I think that comes into play, Melanie, and I'm sure that you and Esther, I've dealt with this even right now. Sometimes I think, oh my gosh, how can I even be hosting this Twitter chat for people? But we deal with this imposter syndrome like, who am I to do, or who am I to tell people about this? What we have to overcome that. How have you found that you've been able to overcome that imposter syndrome for yourself?
That is a really, really good question. Honestly, there's no secret formula, no quick fix to doing that. That's one of your own battles that you have to overcome by yourself. What took the time for me was finally getting sufficient testimonials, people offering to pay me, and just a certain self-belief that you can do it and you can manage. But that really is a very personal journey for each person.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are much better at it than others. Some people can overcome it much faster than others. But I think what's helped me, particularly with the podcast, has been actually working with Esther, because we've kept each other supported.
Oh, that is important to find a good support system for what you're doing and someone to encourage you,
Yeah.
because there are times that you think really have nothing to say, and you still have something to say. You don't want to fill empty space with vanity, but on the other hand, with enough preparation, like, you can do some planning. It doesn't have to be spontaneous. As a matter of fact, you don't want it to be spontaneous. You want to have a plan set up so that you have direction for your podcast. And it also helps you if you're one that brings guests on.
Yeah.
That helps a great deal with that. So what is your planning strategy for you and Esther?
Oh, if Esther's watching this, she's probably laughing as well. Um, okay, well, our strategy for our podcast is we put down topics that we come across that we think would be pertinent. Stuff that comes up in social, any updates that we feel would be necessary to update people with, any learning experiences or blogs that we've written or read. And then normally we start the Zoom or the Zencaster, which is what we've recently moved over to because it's got better sound quality through it, or Anchor again if you're going to be going through there. And normally it's one of us saying, "So, what are we talking about today?" And oh yeah, okay. So I've got a couple of questions here. You ready? Yep. Okay. And that's pretty much our full organization of each podcast.
Well, it is interesting. I think you do have to have like, well, but you have a structure, so you're not just sitting there and kind of jumping from topic to topic. You've
No, we're
selected
not.
a topic. You have questions that you're going to discuss, and those are important. So we have a gal in our USA Biz Party. So I jumped over to her YouTube channel. Obviously, she's now really thinking hard about doing a podcast, and hers is all about farm life. So she lives in rural
Oh,
Washington State, and she's got a couple of videos out there for canning. And the funny thing is people are looking for that. I mean, not that it's funny that she's doing it, but people are looking for that. There are people that love homesteading and want to know how she does it. You know, there
mm.
are people who want to know more about marketing and how to get better at marketing. As a matter of fact, most people do, but there's a special way that you and Esther do it that really resonates with people and draws people to you. And I know you've been very successful. So I believe Agora Pulse has come on board with
Well,
you
that was,
guys.
yeah, last year they came out of the blue, actually. Really, really nice story. We received this email and they said, we've come across your podcast and we'd be interested in sponsoring your podcast for a little while. And I'll be honest with you, we never had this on our orbit at all about anybody sponsoring our podcast. Not because we didn't want to, it's just we just didn't think anybody would at this stage, and we didn't actually believe it was real. So we had to actually contact Agora Pulse direct to see if it was actually a real thing. And fortunately it was. And they were brilliant. They supported us for 3 months. The end of last year really, really helped us build up our audience, and they offered a great deal of information to support us getting set up and started as well. And they even made us brand ambassadors to boot. So yeah, it was a real nice turn of events, and we're very grateful for their support.
And those kinds of things will start to happen or may not. I
Mm.
mean, if you're going to put up a podcast hoping to find a sponsor, there's a way to do that. There's a way to set up your podcast for that. But you know what? If these things can happen, they don't always happen,
No.
but they can happen. And then you can be, very grateful, like yourself and Esther are, for the support that comes from. You just never know who's watching. You never know who's paying attention to what you're doing or what you're saying. And, just be yourself.
Yeah.
Be genuine.
Yeah, you're so right there, Anna. One thing we've noticed in the setup of the workshop that we've got coming up in a little while is how many people said yes straight away when we approached them about speaking. And some of them, not all of them, some of them have been guests already on the podcast, so have understood how we work, who we are, what we do. And we know all of them through our separate roles and maybe working at other events. But all of them decided to come on board without really any toing and froing or questioning. And I think it's because they like the way we convey our message, and they've heard how we conduct ourselves and who we are off the podcast as well. And you're right, it is really surprising who is watching and what they're taking away from what you're learning, what you're offering, sorry. So it was really quite, well, humbling actually to get the speakers that we have for our events, and we're so excited to announce them all. And I can see you're sharing the link there. Thank you so much. So that's to our events page on the Monday Morning Marketing website, and we're going to be having a sign up page fairly soon. But I can't wait until you see who we've got as speakers.
Oh, yes. And the hashtag DMAT21. What's that?
Yeah, well, it's pretty much our mission for this particular workshop is for decision makers and action takers. So this isn't a conference per se. This is a workshop. This is where you're going to come away with downloads and information that you can actually physically put in place straight away. So it's not just about education, but doing as well. So decision makers and action takers, you're all invited. This event is for you.
Awesome. Awesome sauce. And how else? And talk a little bit about the Monday Morning Marketing Podcast. Where do they find it? How do they listen? And where do they get those notifications so that they can be sure to get them when you go live?
Yes, absolutely. Well, you'll find us on, first of all, the website. And from there, obviously, both of us being into marketing, you'll find all of our social buttons on there as well. So we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Google My Business as well. Thanks to Amanda Tento, who has shown us how to use Google My Business properly. So, this is the opportunity to get small bite-sized podcasts sent to your inbox pretty much every Monday, and we've got podcasts planned up until the end of the year and starting to look beyond. So if you've got anything you feel you can offer that will benefit our audience, we'd love to hear from you. And in the meantime, do check out the websites, check out the events page that went up today, brand new today, and it's going to be a heck of an event, really is.
Well, Melanie, thank you for joining today. Thank you for sharing. I think it's important that people kind of get a behind the scenes look at podcasting, particularly yours. And and when is the event? Maybe I missed it. What is the date?
Yes, it's on the 15th of November. So it's 6 weeks yesterday, till the event. And I just want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to, first of all, tell people about podcasting and how it isn't actually that hard. There is a bit of time effort that goes into it, but there really isn't a huge amount of expense at the beginning. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to mention to your audience about our event as well.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining today, Melanie. Now, for those of you, again, join us on USA Biz Party. The purpose of our USA Biz Party is not just to have fun, but it's to learn and to grow together, to help people grow their businesses. We cover all sorts of topics that have to do with your business, whether you're a big business, a small business, a medium business, getting started in business. We are the place for you. And we talk about things like podcasting, we talk about marketing, we talk about social media, and we'll be talking about self-care, a few other topics here in the near future as the holidays come on board soon. So I want to thank you for joining. Thank you for being with us today. And whether you're joining me live or you're watching the replay, it's so good to have you. Check us here again next week, Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Twitter for the next USA Biz Party.